All right, so we're here at the prison. We're here in Gunnison, and I'm excited. I haven't spoken at a prison since I went to Pelican Bay. I think we've got over 100, 150 inmates that are going to be in there. I'm going to talk about purpose. I was trying to think of what would be a message where, you know, these people, some of them are in here for life, some are getting out in a couple weeks, but I wanted something that's going to relate to everybody, so I hope it lands. It's fun. I'm excited to be here, having gone to Pelican Bay and had that experience. You know, I'm not nervous. I'm not worried about the situation. I just want to pour into these guys and hopefully give them an experience that if I can change a couple lives, make a difference. I'm ready. Okay.
That's our max unit. That's where most active team members are.
Oh, okay.
Right back there.
Oh, wow. How are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Jimmy.
Nice to meet you.
Very
Jimmy.
nice to
I'm
meet
Robert
you.
Jarvis.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hey, sir.
Welcome to prison.
Jimmy. Very nice to meet you. Thank you. Thanks for having me here, guys. I'm honored to be able to come here and to speak to you. You know, I get asked to speak about 30, 35 times a year and speak to all different types of groups. And I was really excited to come here today because the last time I had the opportunity to speak at a prison, it changed my life pretty significantly. And I want to kind of start out with that. I went with about 30 other entrepreneurs. We went and taught about 50 prisoners. They had us come in. It's a program called Defy. And it was one of the more powerful experiences I've ever had. I just want to share this quick little part of it while it's fresh on my mind. At one point, you go into this, and I didn't really know what to expect. You know, prisoners is where they house the worst of the prisoners. And so you're kind of a little bit nervous, just don't know what these people are going to be all about. And we get there, and they're nothing but loving, and they're just so excited. They're nervous that, you know, to talk to you and things like that. And then we did this game, not a game, like a exercise called Toe the Line, and basically they lined up all the prisoners on one side. So you got 50 prisoners on one side, and you've got these 30 entrepreneur business owners on the other side. And they said they would say different things, and they say if you've done whatever, then step up to the line. And so whoever had experienced that in their lives would step up to the line. If you hadn't, you step off the line. So at one point they said, you know, if you graduated high school, or if you dropped out of high school, step up to the line. And almost every single prisoner, I think there was only one or two prisoners that hadn't dropped out of high school, and of the volunteers, there was just one high school dropout. And then it went on to the next thing, right? And then at one point, they said if you had at least one parent that tucked you in at night and said they loved you, step up to the line. And I think every single volunteer, except one or two, stepped up to the line. And I think of all 50 prisoners, there was only like one that actually stepped up to the line. And I just saw this drastic difference. And so it just hit me, you know, like how privileged and how lucky we are to have parents that love us and that are there for us and things like that, and what a difference in a life it makes. So to those parents out there, just much love and appreciation. I know my own parents did a lot of things right, and did a couple things maybe not so right, but one thing I know they always did is they always loved me and was there for me, and I felt that. And to be there today and to be able to see that experience and feel that was a powerful moment for me, and just so much gratitude and love for these prisoners. You know, they come from this background that I can't even imagine. Like, they asked another question of how many of them had an immediate family member get killed by the age of 18. It was all but 3. And so profound, so powerful, and just crazy, you know, the different lives that we all live. And it really helped to humanize them. Instead of seeing them as these prisoners or these convicts or whatever, you just see them as people, and you realize that it could be you on the other side of this cage or the other side of the fences. And I'm just grateful, and this was a really cool experience. I'll probably come back in April. The guys in this program are all going to graduate, and it'd be fun to see them. That was one of the most impactful moments of my entire life. I've been able to be on stages with Tony Robbins and Ed Milet, you name it, the most inspirational humans imaginable, and the people that inspired me the most, I can remember all their faces, was the guys at Pelican Bay. And I was pretty intimidated going up there, right? Never been to a prison before. I didn't know what to expect. And as I leaned into that experience, we got to know these men on a very intimate level, and got to spend a lot of time with them, and got to hear their stories, and got to teach each other a lot of things. And one of the cool things about what I get to do now, I have this program called We Are the They, like he mentioned before. And the concept of that comes from this, we always hear problems in society or things that are happening, and people say, well, they need to do something about this. And I used to work with a group that went undercover to foreign countries, and one time we were down in Mexico, we would help rescue children that were being sex trafficked. And we were in Mexico, we'd just done an op, we'd done a rescue and taken down some people, and been able to rescue about 15, 20 children. And on the way back, I was telling my girlfriend about it. We were in my truck on the way home from the airport, and it was a very dangerous op. These guys had guns on them, they had a perimeter set. If any point they knew we were there, for any reason than what they thought is, we were the decoys, we would have been in big trouble. And but we were able to do the takedown, we were able to rescue the kids, and I was telling her about this on the way back, and she pulled over the truck and she said, hey, I don't really want you to go do this anymore. I was like, what are you talking about? Did you not just hear what I said? We rescued these kids, the whole thing. She's like, I know, but it's super dangerous, it's a bad environment. I said, I know, but this is gonna be part of my life's mission now. And she said, well, I get that, but why can't they just go do it? And without even thinking, I said, well, there is no they. We are the they. And when I said that, I was like, oh, shot shivers down my spine, right? Because we want to have change. We want to see things different in society in all these different ways, but we always want somebody else to take care of it. And so that kind of became a model for my life. So when I started this coaching program a couple years ago, the whole purpose is to help men become the best version of themselves. And so rooms like this, I'm very comfortable in. I have about 350 guys that I coach right now. And we get together often in these different settings just to work essentially on ourselves. We haven't lived in their shoes. We haven't had their experience. We don't know how we would react or act in their situation. And so it teaches us to suspend judgment and live in empathy and love instead. And by the time we were done doing that exercise, it's about a 15-minute exercise. Every single one of us entrepreneurs was in tears because we understood, that it very well could have been us just as easily being on the other side of that line. And I remember one of the questions that she asked that really stood out to me. She said, if you've ever committed a felony, step up to the line. It was quite fascinating. I think every single inmate stepped up to the line, and I think only one of the entrepreneurs stepped up to the line. And she said, let me say that again. If you've ever committed a felony, but maybe you didn't get caught, step up to the line. And I started thinking, oh shit, I did some things. What have I done? I'm like, I should probably just go for it. Step up to the line. And then she said, if you've ever been in a fight, step up to the line. Because in different parts of society, in different communities, it's as easy as just getting into a fight with your sibling or your parent or whoever, and you might find yourself in the system for the first time that then leads you to where you might be serving a life sentence into prison. When I started my men's group, We Are the They, what my gift is being able to help unite men, help connect men. Like my group of friends, I was always the connector piece. I was always the one that brought everybody together. But I want to talk about purpose. Because I'm going to tell you a story. I have a podcast that's been super popular, a top-rated podcast in the entire country. And recently I had a guy on about 6-8 months ago. His name's Mason Sawyer. And this guy, about 2 years ago, he was a junior college basketball coach. And he had a family reunion. He lived in St. George, Utah with his family, his wife and 3 kids. And there was a family reunion in Bear Lake. But he had to coach an event or something, so he wasn't going to be able to go. But his wife wanted to go, and so she took the kids. And then his brother and his nephew wanted to go, so they all carpooled together. So his wife, 2 kids, brother and nephew, all drive up to Bear Lake, do the family reunion. On the way back from Bear Lake, there's a giant sandstorm about 30 minutes outside of Cedar City. And you guys, I don't know if you guys get the news in here, whatever, it was giant pile up. And there was a wreck, and a pretty bad one. And he got a call on his cell phone from the police officer, and he said, there's been a wreck with your family, and everybody's dead but one person. And he told the story on my podcast, and he said, I immediately had the worst thought I've ever had in my life. He said, I hope my brother's dead. And he loves his brothers. Not that he didn't want his brother to be alive, but in that moment, he was just hoping that one piece of his immediate family, of his core family, his wife and kids, was alive. And he said it's a 3-year-old boy. And so in that moment, he knew his wife was dead, he knew his brother was dead, he knew his nephew, and he knew his other son was dead. He had one little boy, his little boy Blue, who's 3 years old, somehow survived the wreck. And I had him on my podcast about 1.5 years after that wreck. If you can imagine getting that phone call, your best friend, your brother, your nephew, your wife and one of your two children have passed away in a car wreck all at once. Just unfathomable amount of pain going on there. And he said that in that moment, he had a decision to make, and he said for the first 6 to 8 months, he said he was just, if he survived the day, he'd consider it a win. He couldn't do anything but keep himself alive, just keep himself from killing himself. And he said he met with his therapist, and he asked his therapist one day, he said, hey, you think I'll ever be happy again? And this is the question kind of I want to pose to you guys. A lot of you guys might find yourself in this situation. You might be asking yourself, am I ever going to be happy again? Like, am I ever going to be able to truly have a happy life again? He said, his therapist said, I don't think that's the question that we need to ask. He said, I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, can I find purpose with my life? And I thought that was such a beautiful question, because purpose will bring you more fulfillment than happiness. And so for him, obviously he had one son survive the wreck, and he's doing his best to figure that out. I'm going to tell a couple other little stories. There's one story in particular that touched me that I want to share, talk about purpose as well. I don't know how many of you guys, anybody here have a military background? About 22 former military or ex-military people take their lives every single day. And I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of these guys. In fact, I just barely had on my coaching group call this week a guy by the name of Nick Lavery. He's the first ever Special Forces guy to have a leg blown off. He had his leg literally blown off in combat and went back into active duty. So the guy is literally still out fighting with one leg. It's the first one ever to do. He's Green Beret. And so I get the opportunity to be around a lot of these really special military guys, and I had a chance to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro about 3-4 years ago. It's the highest peak in Africa, just an amazing experience. So there was a very famous UFC fighter, Rashad Evans, he's in the Hall of Fame of the UFC, was supposed to go with, and he bailed out at the last second. He hurt his leg, couldn't go do the hike. And he said, dude, I think I can get you on. And I'm just stoked, right? I mean, it was like Haloti Ngata, NFL Hall of Famer, you know, and one of the best defensive players ever. You know, Jason Kelsey, who's the Pro Bowl center of the Eagles, that just, you know, incredible human being. And I'm just like so pumped to go with these guys. So I get on, right? And I'm like a realtor. So we start climbing the mountain. We get there the first day, and I notice there's a guy named Q, and he had one leg. And keep in mind, this hike is about 57 to 60 hours of hiking straight up a mountain, right? The highest peak in all of Africa. For every 18,000 people that try to go up, one dies, which doesn't seem like that many, but it's several per year, you know, pass away trying to climb this mountain. And before we started, I had the chance to have breakfast with this guy, Q, and I started talking to him, and I said, hey man, how come you're doing this? Like, what's your motivation? And he said, you know, a lot of people want to help the military. They want to give us tickets to the game. They want to give us, you know, accolades, or just, you know, they're very nice to us. He said, but the truth is the reason why 22 ex-military guys take their lives every single day is because we've lost our purpose. When you're serving in the military, you have so much importance. You have so much purpose. You have so many things to look forward to. And when that's taken away, they have a really hard time finding purpose. He said, I've tried to take my own life twice, and to be honest, I want to do this because I want to prove to my friends, the ones that are struggling, the other amputees, these people that are really in a bad spot mentally, that they have something to look forward to. Wow, that's pretty intense. So I'm like, I've instantly gone from like, we're here with the NFL guys to like, holy shit, this is kind of big. And then the first day we're hiking, there was a guy that was with us. His name's Dave Vabora. This guy's a 6'4" linebacker for the Rams. This dude was just a total badass. And he was the one that owned the gym where they would train the amputees. It's called the Adaptive Training Center. And they just help people that have lost limbs in war, or like one guy was skydiving and his chute didn't open and shattered his legs, so he had no legs, things like that. But they help them find purpose through sport. And he said, this dude has been on the verge of suicide since the day we've met him. He said, Jimmy, I got a call 2 months ago from his wife. He had a shotgun in his mouth. Like, he's not doing well. He said, here's the truth. He said, if we get to the top of this mountain, he's going to find purpose because he's going to be able to go back. He's going to be able to help other men overcome these obstacles. He said, if he doesn't get to the top of the mountain, he's probably going to be dead within 6 months. I'm like, oh, no pressure to get to the top of the mountain now, you know. I'm like, so we're hiking all night, and I'm watching this guy with one leg, and he probably fell 80, 90 times that night. I'm just watching him crawling, and he's bleeding. I'm just watching. I'm so inspired. I mean, my feet are numb. It's cold as hell. My heart's pounding out of my chest. My head feels like it's going to explode. And all I can think is watching this guy. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to complain about any of this. And I wanted him so bad to get to this peak because I knew it was on the line. As I'm watching this, we got, and for those of you familiar with Mount Kilimanjaro, there's like a false summit. So you kind of get to the top, but it's not the peak. You think you're there. You actually have about another 600 feet of height to go, but you're already on the rim. So you're at the peak altitude and you have to walk. It's about an hour and a half to actually get to the peak. And when we got to that false summit, there was a couple guys that were in charge of making sure we were all health-wise got off the mountain. So our guide that was from Tanzania, this guy named Orca, and then Chris Long, who was in charge of our group, Howie Longson, they're talking to each other. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and they're like, Q's done. He's given everything he had. We're 3 hours behind. I mean, he's bleeding. He can barely breathe. We need to get him off the mountain. And I'm like, oh no. Like, I know what's on the line here. It's like, I just talked to Dave. If this guy doesn't get to the top, he's probably gonna be dead in 6 months. And I'm like sitting there looking around. You got all these big NFL guys and, these special forces guys. I'm the freaking realtor. I'm like, how am I gonna speak up here, And finally I see Dave, the guy that trained him. I'm like, do something. And Dave, just this 6'4" linebacker, comes running up and he grabs him. He's like, damn it, Q, we're going to the peak. That's what we signed up for. Let's go. And the other two guys are like, okay. And long story short, we ended up getting them to the peak. And it was about 4 years ago, like I said. And I talk to Q quite regularly. He comes and speaks to my men's group. And he's thriving. He actually works for the company that helped him adaptive training now, and he helps other guys to reach their goals. He teaches them how to snowboard, how to do all these amazing things, and he's just thriving in life. He still battles depression and everything, but he has a purpose. With you guys, I thought a lot about what to talk about coming in here. Just, again, your situation being what it is, it's different than, when somebody's got all the freedom in the world, they have that advantage that they can their mind can really go to whatever they want to do with their purpose. But then I started thinking, actually, what are the advantages that they have? Because there's so many advantages that you have as well. You have an experience, because I really believe the depth of our challenge, like it's like a tree, as deep as the roots go is how high the tree can go. And so you guys have an opportunity to reach people like nobody ever else. And on my podcast, some of you guys might have heard of this book before. I interviewed actually just last week a guy by the name of Damon West. He wrote a book called The Coffee Bean. Has anybody ever heard of it before? He speaks to prisons all over the world, all over the country now. He spent 9 years in federal prison. He was running a meth organized crime thing in Dallas, got sentenced to life in prison. Ended up getting out after 9 years. And he talks about this story, the coffee bean. I'll share it real quick because I wasn't sure how many of you guys had heard his story or not. I know that, again, he talks in prisons a lot, and I don't want to steal his story, but it was so impactful to me, and I just started thinking about this. And he said the reason why his book is called The Coffee Bean, he said when he was about to go into prison, he was speaking, he was in county jail, and he's talked to this old guy. He said, you're about to go to one of the most brutally tough places imaginable to men. He said, I'm going to name 3 objects and tell you a little story. When you have boiling water, the first one is a carrot, the next one's an egg, and the next one's a coffee bean. He said, if you put a carrot into that boiling water, it goes soft. He said, you don't want to do that in prison. You'll have a really hard time. He said, if you put an egg into that water, it boils, it hardens. He said, that also isn't where you want to be. But if you put a coffee bean in water, it actually changes the water into coffee. And he said, that's the impact that you want to be thinking about. How can you, in this place, be the change agent? How can you be the person that actually changes the environment itself of which you've been placed? Because you can't change where you're at, but you can change the place that you're at. And every single day, that is a purpose that every single one of you can think about, can lean on, and can kind of figure out for yourself, how do I want to do my time in here? Do I want to be a change agent? Do I want to be a coffee bean and try to help everybody else around me? Because you have just as much power to impact and more power to impact the people around you than almost anybody else. I came up with my life's purpose, and for me, I spent about a week on this, and it was cool because this is a director for me now for my life. And I'd encourage you guys to come up with some life purpose for you that works for you. Mine is the purpose of my life is to share my tremendous love with all of God's children, bringing happiness to others through my playful soul and by being an example of living an extraordinary life. And the first part of that is the reason why this was such an easy yes when they asked me to come speak here. The purpose of my life is to share my tremendous love with all of God's children, because you guys are just as worthy of my time as anyone else I've ever given it to. So I honor you guys. I appreciate you. I invite you to think about your purpose while you're in here, and if or when that day comes when you get out, because you absolutely can have just as much or greater impact on society and on each other than anyone else, whether they're in here or out there. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. Really? It's like, if I hadn't gone to Pelican Bay, I think I would have been. Like, that was, I mean, we walked in, it was actually really cool. They lined up all the inmates on 2 rows. And we went, it was like we were running out to the Super Bowl. We all, okay, everybody run in. And it was like, they were all yelling and cheering us on. I was like, this is insane. It was wild. It was like, it was a once in a lifetime thing. Well, that's the thing is like, it was, you know, yeah. So I think of the 100 inmates we worked with, I think 70 were in for like murder or, I mean, like serious crimes. We're doing life, you know. And then we went to the, what do you call it, solitary confinement unit, and would talk to a bunch of them and stuff too, but they just need a place to open up. Dude, thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you, man.
So we're just leaving now. Had the opportunity to speak to probably about 100, 150 prisoners, inmates, and really cool. It was one of the most attentive audiences I've ever spoken for. Had good questions. We're very engaged. Super impactful. I'm going to be thinking a lot of how I can use this experience to help them more. A lot more feelings and thoughts about this to come. I'll recap this video, but just wanted to kind of have something here as I'm leaving.